Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
This week's national interest transcends two politically important anniversaries. First, in chronological order, is the 30th anniversary of the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi. And second, a few days from now, is the second anniversary or completion of 2 years of Narendra Modi's second government. Now, these two anniversaries also tell us the story of today's politics, because we are not looking at the past, we are looking at the future. And there's no point talking about the past all the time, because, as they say with mutual funds, past is not necessarily a guide to future performance. So if you are looking at future performance of these political parties, or the turn that Indian politics may or may not take, then these two anniversaries and what emerges from these becomes very significant. Before I go there, however, I know that many of you are wondering, and you might have figured from my smile, many of you are wondering that how come I haven't given you my periodic reminder to renew your subscriptions, or if you haven't taken one, to take one now. Please take a paid subscription to The Print. Pay for your news. Everything good doesn't come to you for free. Maybe God gives you air and light and rain and stuff like that for free. Nothing else comes for free. Nothing that human beings give you comes for free. And it is because of your support right now that you see that we have reporters going all across the country. We have told the entire country of the tragedy that is unfolding, unfortunately, in large parts of India. And you've seen these reporters of ours, you've seen their stories go viral, you've seen them you've seen them get appreciation, also brickbats, galis, trolling, which is a part of life. We deal with it. So thank you very much, but we need a lot more of it. So keep doing it. If you have a renewal due, please renew. If you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe. And also, I'm very happy that so many of you are now contributing to Your Turn, our subscribers only feature where you can write your opinion. I'm sharing a bunch of screenshots with you of our subscribers whose articles have been published, and I also share these on my social media handles periodically. So have more come in, and we are now unrolling more subscriber benefits. For example, we send you at this point a letter a month telling you about all our reporters who've been traveling across the country. We'll do it now more frequently, maybe once a week for some time, until this news environment remains so alive with the COVID challenge, for sure. But also, we are starting a process whereby our subscribers only can interact with one of our reporters in the field once a week to begin with in COVID season, and then we'll see how it goes along. It will be on Zoom. We will send you a password, so use that password. For now, it will be the 100 first on first come first served basis. On the same basis, I will also be inviting you to a conversation I will do under Off the Cuff with Sri Ravi Shankar ji, the spiritual teacher based in Bengaluru, next Friday at 12 noon. So once again, we'll send you passwords to our subscribers. You log on. First 100 for now will be able to log on and participate on first come, first served basis. And this will then be an ongoing process. With the passage of every week, we will add more benefits for our subscribers, including a lot of merchandise, stuff like this. Not just this, but stuff like this, I think a lot trendier than this. And don't remember what we say, particularly on the other side of this one, because politics matters. Because without politics, there is no democracy. Without democracy, there is nothing. There is no India. And without freedom of speech and free press, there is no democracy, politics, and a free India. So that's why the responsibility on you to keep the free press going. Now, back to our politics, because politics matters. So the big political question right now is 2 years of Narendra Modi in the second term. In India's political history, only one prime minister has won 3 consecutive terms, and that was Jawaharlal Nehru. He also won those quite easily, even though in 1962 he was doing quite badly because of the Chinese crisis and things were looking bad for India in many different ways. There were also troubles in his cabinet, but he won 3 terms. So can Narendra Modi repeat that performance and win 3 terms also? Because his next test will come in 2024. Now, Rajiv Gandhi's experience tells us, and that of many other governments, that usually a government comes to a point after the completion of its 2 years where it can go up or it can go down. Narendra Modi in his first term went up after 2 years. UPA won after its first 2 years, went up, but UPA 2 in its second year began to go down. Rajiv Gandhi in his second year began to go down, or around time if completed his second year. What happens to Narendra Modi in his second term? So we have some very well-known commentators, respected commentators like T.N. Nayanan, whose article we publish today. We publish him every week, every Saturday. So he says that this is a much weakened Narendra Modi and he can still recover, but he's lost that one thing he always had, something that Napoleon said a good general must always have, a successful general, that is luck. That he had luck for so many years, for 7 years, now his luck seems to be deserting him. So I don't know. But at the same time, we cannot do a future projection or a future analysis based on luck, because we are not clairvoyants, we are not palmists, astrologers, nothing. We can't use graphs, nakshatras. In fact, I don't even believe in them. So, what is it that we learn from the politics so far, and how do we look at politics going ahead? That is what this week's National Interest is all about. Now, if you look at the Congress party and the BJP, the reason we say these two anniversaries are important is Congress party is not even a pale shadow of what it was when Rajiv Gandhi left it. Rajiv Gandhi won the party its last majority in 1984, the biggest majority in India's history. Since then, the Congress party has not won a majority. In fact, he lost that majority in 1989. And since then, the Congress party has declined. Now it's become an also-ran, a distant also-ran, but even as a distant also-ran, it is the number 2 to the BJP. BJP, on the other hand, has now moved way ahead. So if you look at the last 2 national elections, 2014 and 2019, in constituencies where it was Congress versus the BJP, where the Congress was the main challenger of the BJP's strike rate or success rate against the Congress was around 90%. In fact, precisely it was 88% in 2014, and it got better or it got worse for the Congress, 92% for the BJP in 2019. That means if there was 100 seats in which it was Congress versus the BJP, or Congress was the second, BJP won 92. And if you go into greater and deeper detail, you will find that the gap between the two candidates or the margin of victory for the BJP was humongous in these cases. So it would look like the Congress doesn't matter. But does the Congress not matter? In that case, why are we then saying that Congress still is the only likely threat to the BJP? Congress still is the only party that can make Narendra Modi's third bid for power difficult or increase his degree of difficulty, maybe even defeat him. These are all theoretical possibilities. We are not predicting anything. But without Congress, it cannot be done. And why do we say so? Because look at the overall numbers, say, of the last election. 2014 are very similar, so let's only go by 2019. In 2019, BJP got 38% of the popular vote for itself. India is the first past the post system, as we know. Congress, on the other hand, got 20%. I'm just rounding this off. I think BJP was 37.6, Congress was 19.6 or something. So I'm just rounding off all the numbers for ease of analysis. So 38%, 20%. That means Congress got about half of the BJP's vote. And you also know that Congress also contests in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, places where the BJP does not particularly exist. So, nevertheless, BJP got twice as many votes for the Congress. So, why should we bother about the Congress? Because if you go lower down, then you will find that the next party, the third party in India, did not even get into double figures, did not even get 10% of the vote. It is like a team getting all out for 52. In this case, if I might you choose that number because that's the number the Congress got. A team that gets out for 52, of which one batter gets 20 and all the others get 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So not only does any third party after the Congress not get to double figures, but frankly, if you look at the data, it's quite startling. You can add any three parties from UPA, Mahagathbandhan, the left parties, all the others, and including BJP's own partners in the NDA. You can pick out of this entire basket. You add up the three parties getting the highest number of votes, together they cannot get up to 10%. So that is what tells you the importance of 20% in this environment is. But at the same time, I'll give you the other meta number. The other meta number is the NDA, that is BJP and its allies, got 44% of the vote. UPA, which is Congress and its allies, got 25% of the vote. Again, the difference is humongous between the two, but see what can happen going ahead. Now, the BJP, why is it so that the BJP keeps winning like this, and what is the method that the BJP follows to structure its politics? Now, a lot of people say that Congress will really grow. For Congress to rise to its potential, the Gandhis have to get out of the way. That Rahul and Sonia and Priyanka have to get out of the way, that their shadow it is which keeps Congress on the sidelines, which makes sure that Congress cannot grow. You can say that. You can say this is a banyan tree under which nothing else grows, which means no other Congress leaders grow. But does the BJP buy into that? My submission is that the BJP does not buy into that. That is why the BJP always attacks the Gandhi dynasty. It doesn't particularly attack the Congress party or Congress ideology. You will see that keeps on relentlessly with its campaign of papufication of Rahul Gandhi. So people only laugh at Rahul Gandhi. At no point of time it can risk people beginning to take, or a large enough number of people beginning to take Rahul Gandhi seriously. It keeps on attacking Sonia Gandhi for her Italian origin. At the same time, you will find it expressing great love and sympathy and affection for many other leaders of the Congress party, particularly those who might be seen to be disaffected or sulking. Remember how the Prime Minister even shed his tears while making a farewell speech for Ghulam Nabi Azad in Rajya Sabha. So there is one treatment for other leaders of the Congress, current and of the past. So BJP also does not attack any Congress leaders of the past. In fact, increasingly, it is now embracing them. The latest was Pranab Mukherjee, but it is the Gandhi family. Nehru, Indira very carefully, because they know that Indira still is quite popular among the poor, so they only attack her over the emergency. And then Rajiv Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, etc., etc. So this is very Gandhi family centric because they know three things. They know three things, which is why they are successful. One, they know something that many others in the opposition don't accept, or many other critics of Narendra Modi don't accept. One, that Congress is the only party that can be their challenger. The BJP knows it, Modi and Shah know it, and acknowledge it. Number two, that if this 20% vote share that the Congress has, and that they have retained between two elections, it's been very solid. Between 2014 and 19, Congress has been exactly where it was, 20%. If they can keep this 20% vote share, then there is always a possibility they can take it up to 25. Even if they take it up to 25, they don't have to get more votes than the BJP. But even if they get 20 to 25, it changes national politics. Because if they take 20 to 25, mostly it will be taken from the BJP, because BJP sweeps all the seats where it's Congress versus the BJP. So even that 5% can change national politics. You may still have an NDA government. It may still be an NDA government headed by Narendra Modi, but it will be more of a coalition government. So they will not be able to run that government like that. And if the 25% goes higher to 27, 8, all bets will be off. Then competition may emerge from within the BJP and NDA partners on who the Prime Minister would be. They understand it. The third point that they understand and they acknowledge and they embrace, being sharp political minds, is that Gandhi family is the key to the Congress party. They are the key to the survival of the Congress party. They know that Gandhi family may be contemptuous of them. Gandhi family, they may be contemptuous of Gandhi family in turn, but as long as they are there, Congress party stays together. So that's the reason they keep on attacking Gandhi family all the time. Now, what is the Congress getting wrong whereby it's doing so badly in the elections? In fact, the last time Congress defeated the BJP, or the only time it has in these last 7 years, was those 3 state elections of late 2018, that is Chhattisgarh, which is decisive, Rajasthan, which was a narrow points victory, and Madhya Pradesh, which was a very narrow points victory and didn't last. But besides that, I'm not counting Punjab, because in Punjab, Congress is not against the BJP, but it's against the Akali Dal and Aam Aadmi Party. BJP is just a junior partner there. So, what is it that the Congress is getting wrong? So, there are 3 errors that Congress party makes in its understanding of national politics, or 3 flaws. And don't come back at me saying, I mean, some people will come back at me, because Congress employs now as many trolls as the BJP, because that's the one thing that Congress has learned from the BJP. In fact, many of them tend to be more abusive even than the BJP social media warriors, but that doesn't matter. The fact is that one party has 52 seats, one party has 303 seats. So we have to look at the flaws in the thinking of the party with 52 as to why they are doing so badly. So the 3 flaws are: one, that they think that Modi, and they've been thinking for too long, that Narendra Modi phenomenon is a passing aberration, that soon enough people of India will come to their senses and say, galti ho gayi, right? Now, they also think that this didn't happen in 2019 because of Pulwama, Balakot, because Modi was able to pull that thing off, and that's why nationalism spread wildly in the country, and at that point people forgot their other grievances. That is the one point. Second mistake they make is they think that the Achilles heel of the BJP, Achilles heel maybe comes from Greek history and mythology. So let me just say, let me draw an example from our own Ramayana. Say Ravana's navel, Ravan ki Nabhi, because that's where it was said that he had Amrit stored. So until you burst it, until Lord Ram got the message from Lord Brahma to burst it, he wasn't going to die. And I use this parallel non-judgmentally. So please don't say I'm comparing the BJP with Ravan. So they think that the Achilles heel or the Ravan's navel equivalent for the BJP is the RSS and its ideology. So they keep attacking the RSS, its ideology, Golwalkar, Savarkar, so on and so forth. Now, RSS or any ideology, these are amorphous things. RSS is an amorphous thing. Whereas Gandhi family are people who are clear and present. Also, Golwalkar, Savarkar, Godse, also, they are people in the past. There are limitations to how much attacking them works for you, and they don't have their physical dynasts from their families. They may be ideological dynasts, but not physical dynasts in the fray right now, which is the case with the Gandhi family. So they attack these guys and this ideology, and this doesn't work adequately for them. Whereas, as we know, the BJP only attacks Nehru and Gandhi. And third flaw in Congress thinking, and that's my assessment, is that they think that the future of the Congress is towards the hard left. So they made this hard left turn. There's nothing about the Gandhis, nothing about the Gandhi families that convinces anybody on the left, or that will convince anybody that they are genuine followers of the left. the clear positioning of the Congress party has only been slightly, conveniently, cynically left of center, and that pendulum keeps moving a little bit here and there between the center and the left, depending on the circumstances. But this kind of a hard left turn is now quite striking. When Mrs. Gandhi did this, Indira Gandhi did this 1969 onwards, she did it because she needed the left. She needed the left for support in parliament because she was short of numbers to begin with. She also needed the left, or the section of the pro-Soviet section of the left, to also help her deepen her strategic relationship with the Soviet Union going up to the war in 1971. So she was able to use the left to her own benefit, to the extent that when she imposed the emergency, that faction of the left, that is CPI, the pro-Moscow faction, even defended the emergency. This generation of the Gandhi family, on the other hand, is allowing itself to be used by the left. And that's a flaw. You want to see an example of that? I will tell you a very recent example. Look at Bengal. In Bengal, they partnered with the left against Mamata Banerjee, who now they are sending congratulatory messages to for winning this election and defeating Modi. Instead of joining with her, because she had the best chance of defeating Modi. At the same time, they were also contesting against the left in Kerala. Now, how does that make any sense? Think about it. If they had gone with Mamata Banerjee in Bengal, irrespective of what she was giving them, even if she gave them a dozen seats to contest on, if they had gone with her, number one, it would have given their campaign clarity in Kerala. So in Kerala, their opponents, including the left, would not have been able to say, look at these guys, they speak against the left here, they are the partners with the left in West Bengal. And that's what the BJP did also. They said, look at the Congress party, they are such hypocrites. They are in Kerala, they want you to vote out the left. In Bengal, they are with the left. So they shot themselves in one foot, because Kerala is a state where they had a chance of winning the state. I'm not saying just doing this would have won it, but they had a chance of winning the state. So the stakes were high. Bengal, on the other hand, they had very little chance of getting many seats. But if they had gone with Mamata, one, it would have given them clarity in Kerala. And second, even if they had won 10, 12, a dozen, 8, 14, whatever number of seats, remember, any number would have been beneficial. Any number is better than zero, which is what they have now got. So they effectively shot themselves in both their feet out of this new obsession for the left, where they are letting the left exploit them instead of instead of exploiting the left to their own ends, like their grandmother had been able to do. So that's a big flaw in this case. In fact, you want to see how dependent they are on the left now. See how the Congress party's social media activity works. A lot of it, including a lot of their anonymous handles, which use the most abuse, much more abuse than the BJP's, are actually run by young people of the hard left, not even from the conventional left, from the hard left. And that is the third big flaw. Now, Mamata Banerjee today looks like the big flavor of the fortnight, a flavor of the week, a flavor of the season. There's been a lot of discussions. She's defeated Modi. So can she defeat Modi again? Modi now has trouble. But think. So my colleague, who's much more astute than me on politics, DK Singh, our political editor, he's watched politics all the time. I watch all kinds of things, including cricket, tennis, hockey, everything. But he watches only politics. So he reminds me that while you might talk of Mamata Banerjee right now, if you look at the 16 state elections, remember there will be 16 state elections leading up to 2024 national elections, 16, 1-6. And I will count those elections for you. Of these, 7 will be next year. 7 will be 2022. Which ones? There will be Uttar Pradesh, the big one, Uttarakhand, Punjab, Goa, and Manipur in February, March 2022. Then there will be Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh in somewhere between October and December 2022. In 2023, that's the last year before the general elections, last year before the big final of national politics, the Kumbh Mela of national politics, In 2023, we have 9 state elections. These are Meghalaya, Nagaland, Tripura in February, then Karnataka in May, a big state, and then the bellwether states of Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Chhattisgarh, and also Telangana now in that same basket, again a bellwether state for the south. So Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Telangana, and Mizoram, 5 in December. 9 plus 5 plus 2, this adds up to 16 states. In these 16 states, DK Singh points out to me, in 15, it will be Congress versus the BJP. Even if you take a state like Telangana, we know that KCR is the main party. The two challengers will be Congress and the BJP. The BJP is growing. And if the Congress collapses there once again, that means BJP would have then established a big foothold in one more important state. On the other hand, if Congress grows, it would have put the BJP in the shade there, at least stopped it in its tracks, in its growth in the south. So once again, between now and 2024, out of the 16 state elections to take place, barring Uttar Pradesh, where Congress doesn't matter particularly, in all other states, it will be Congress versus the BJP. If Congress does a little bit better, it will improve the party's morale, it will improve the party's positioning, it will improve the party's bargaining, negotiating position with other likely allies in the UPA, and also it may just bring it more money and more funds by way of anonymous electoral bonds, because corporates, as we know, rich people always hedge their bets. So they think, who knows, tomorrow some change might take place in India, so let's give some more money to the Congress party also. So all that can change if Congress party gets its politics right. Now the question is, how will the Congress party get its politics right? And that is the key thing. Now it is very simplistic to say that Congress party is letting its side down. Congress party should get out of the way, choose Sharad Pawar, Mamata Banerjee, somebody as the leader of the opposition, take a back seat and let them go and fight, because Congress party is a liability, particularly with the Gandhis. Or Congress party should get rid of the Gandhis, then anybody can build a coalition around the Congress party and defeat Narendra Modi. So such a thing is not going to happen. This truth is that, because the truth about the Congress party is that you can say this 178 times, you can write up 278 times. I'm just arbitrarily conjuring up that number. You can write those columns any number of times saying that only if Rahul was to go, right? But Rahul will not go. Or only if Gandhi family were to go. They will not go, because even if they go, Congress party will not stay together. Now that is the truth about the Congress, which many Modi critics don't realize, because they are so desperate, because they so dislike Modi, that think, oh, ye Rahul raste se nikal jaye, ya ye Gandhi family raste se nikal jaye. But Modi and Shah are smarter. They embrace the truth that many Congress supporters and Modi critics don't, which is that without the Gandhis, there will be no Congress. Congress may not be able to get 20% votes, more than 20% votes under the Gandhis today, but they keep the party together, which keeps the score of 20% together. And 20%, as we know, is twice as much as any 3 other parties had got in the last 2 elections, 2014 and 19. So see this in perspective. They understand this. So this 20% is something that matters. Now BJP also, further, the reason why Gandhis can't go away or won't go away, the BJP gets its center of gravity through its ideology and the RSS. Now whether or not you like the RSS, you can adore the RSS, worship it like a guru or a god or a teacher or a divine teacher, or you can detest it, hate it, call it an equivalent of Nazi party or whatever. But the RSS is an institution. Gandhi family, on the other hand, is a family. These are individuals. You might say the family is an institution, but it is the Gandhi family which is the one single pillar on which the Congress party rests. So if the Gandhi family goes away, there will be no Congress party. But then you might say, if Gandhi family stays there, Congress party only gets 20%, then it's slam dunk. Modi has won 2024, but remember, politics is never a one-horse race. Politics can change, and Modi's third bid for power can be made more challenging. If so, and who would do it and how? Those are the questions we need to raise, and we also try to answer in conclusion. Number one, many third, fourth, secular, progressive fronts have been tried in the past. They fail, and they make actually a bad case for such fronts in the future. So there was Sanyukt Vidhayak Dal in 1967 and many Mahagathbandhans through VP Singh's Jan Morcha, United Fronts which gave us prime ministers on daily wages and so on. So that is not going to work. You can then argue on the other side that regional leaders, they may not be able to put together a front that gets power in the country, but they can still defeat a national leader. You can see that the main reason Vajpayee lost despite his popularity in 2004 was because he was defeated by many regional parties, some directly who turned against him, and some because they were his partners and they got wiped out. So he lost 2004 because of regional parties. So this is the power of the regional parties. In 2019, the UPA polled 25-26% of the vote compared to NDA's 44. What if more partners joined that UPA and took it to 34, or maybe reduced the NDA to 36? So 32 to 36, they may still be an NDA government, but will it necessarily be a Modi government? Or will it necessarily be able to function like today's Modi-Shah government? So equations can change with an alliance like that if politics is done right. Now, Congress and the other parties in what might loosely describe as the Modi Pidit Samaj have one more option. Think of what a company with great legacy brands and strong old customer loyalties but losing out to a niftier, younger, newer challenger does. It gets a CEO from someplace else. It says maybe our people are not able to fight this new sharper competition. Let's get the CEO from outside. It won't happen in the Congress. The Congress party itself will not get a CEO from the outside. You can forget it. But can it happen with a larger opposition coalition with Congress at its core? What Congress will bring to the table won't be the charisma of its leaders, but it will bring that loyal 20% customer base, which is very, very important. If such a thought emerges, then Mamata Banerjee and others like her can be back in the reckoning. It would also mean the Congress giving up the delusion of being the natural party of governance. It will be painful, but not impossible, nor will it be an irrational fantasy nursed by those who keep asking the Gandhis just to go away and melt in the horizon someplace.